Peach, you're so cool, and with your poleaxe we're gonna rule. Hi, and welcome to this channel where we talk about the intersection between arms and armor and women's history. And so imagine my excitement when I found out that Princess Peach was wielding a poleaxe in the trailers for the Super Mario Bros. Movie. And there have been lots of different responses to Princess Peach was a poleaxe, some of them very much enamored, and others decrying it as part of the nefarious woke agenda. On the surface, Princess Peach has always been the model for the damsel in distress tropes in video games and wider media. As early as the first Mario games, with her first appearance in the 1985 Mario Bros. As Princess Toadstool. So this princess of the Mushroom Kingdom often drives the plot of the video game forward by being captured and needing to be rescued by our plumber who needs no introduction, Mario, and his brother Luigi, who actually is really my favourite. He was always my choice in Mario Kart, which I think is the most important defining feature of any one person. Despite Peach often being this damsel in distress, she becomes a playable character quite early on in the Mario franchise. We had to wait till 2005 for her to have the role as the main character in Super Princess Peach, where she has to save Mario, Luigi and Toad. She's also playable in a range of Mario game spin-offs like Mario Tennis, Mario Golf, and obviously the blueprint for Biker Peach, Mario Kart. And there was obviously some demand to see Peach in more proactive roles from the Nintendo fandom, because she ended up the second most requested character to appear in Super Smash Bros. Melee, Nintendo's crossover multiplayer fighting game, where she effectively kick punches her way through the game, but also uses a range of weapons. Starting with the frying pan. People are going to wonder why this is missing from the kitchen, and it's for a very, very valid reason, okay? The frying pan is definitely one of those weapons where you look at it being used for a woman protagonist and you think, really? But to be fair, they go all out in Super Smash Bros. Melee, and it is Peach's most powerful melee weapon. So maybe there's something there about reclaiming the humble frying pan, she being quite a deadly weapon in itself, which is something we see with other protagonists from around the early 2000s. And sometimes its comical, disarming aspect ends up being an advantage in battle. A historical anecdote is that Richard the Lionheart was distracted out of his tent by an enemy soldier using a frying pan as a shield, and as a result, in this moment of laughter and distraction, ended up being shot by an arrow. But the frying pan also represents an element of domestic subversion and protest, with ordinary items being used against the ruling class or more generally to question and disrupt the status quo. The tradition of banging saucepans to express dissent started in the medieval period in France. My home country does it again, but really picked up centuries later in the same country as a tool of protest in the July Revolution, leading to King Charles X's abdication. We're the experts on starting different revolutions, having monarchies that then fail and then republics that also fail. So it's used in a range of countries in the 20th century, but it really took off with cacerolazos, the practice of the banging of pots and pans as protest in 1970s Chile, then spreading across Latin America in general. It was featured in recent protests in Lebanon and Kenya, and made its way back to France, with current protests happening against the French government.
Outside a vocational school for teachers in Lyon, some 100 or so protesters lie in wait for France's education minister.
Which raises several interesting questions about to what extent something can be classified as a weapon, and the importance that noise plays as a kind of sonic weapon. And speaking of unassuming weapons with lethal potential, let's talk about the parasol.
Run.
So just as iconic as the frying pan, maybe a little bit more elegant, the parasol is used by Princess Peach as both a weapon and a means of elegant transportation. The parasol also appears in Super Smash Bros. Melee, so she can glide in the air with it and hit opponents. The parasol Peach uses in Super Princess Peach actually has a mind of its own. which has terrifying implications. The law gets weirder because apparently this parasol was once a human being that was transformed into a parasol by sorcerers, and parry the parasol can be used to just hit enemies over the head, but also eats them to refill its vibe gorge. Parry the parasol does not give me good vibes. So I have not found many records about sentient parasols eating enemies, thankfully, but there is a link to parasol fighting with the art of Bartitsu, so a martial art practice that developed in 19th century England, which is this weird mix of different methods of self-defense. Boxing, there's jiu-jitsu, there's cane fighting, and then there's French kickboxing or savate, using not only your hands, self-defense, but also everyday objects such as canes, but also parasols. After the London Bartitsu Club closed in 1902, in fact, instructors Miss Sanderson and Pierre Vigny continued to teach parasol fighting or umbrella fighting as a means of self-defense. And while the umbrella could be used by any gender in a pinch, the parasol was obviously more connotated as a feminine accoutrement. And this concept actually travelled all the way to the US and became quite popular as this means of self-defense. And even before the 20th century, there were already instructors in the US, such as Colonel Monstery, who offered classes for self-defense that included the use of the parasol. So I'm probably even gonna provide a little bit of an extract on what Monstery has to say about the use of the parasol as a means of self-defense. An umbrella is a fearful weapon if used with both hands, like a bayonet. It will parry the blows of a big bully, and you can return him a stab in the face or breast or stomach that will settle him. A lady can defend herself from outrage with her parasol in the same way. And Monstery was actually the instructor for an amazing competitive fencer on horseback, La Jaguarina. Find out more in my podcast, Bustles and Broadswords. So umbrella and parasol fighting definitely had this centering women from the start. And fast forwarding a little bit in time, it's actually used as a weapon by the suffragettes themselves in a street fight with the police in the summer of 1913. As the police were trying to rearrest leading suffragette Emmeline Pankhurst, her suffragette companions flew to her rescue, umbrellas at the ready. Six of them at least were arrested for offensive weapon use of a parasol or umbrella. Unfortunately, it was all for nothing because Emmeline Pankhurst was taken back into custody by the police. But this definitely only helped to further the reputation that the suffragettes had in terms of being able to fight for liberation and freedom by any means necessary. So this weapon definitely has quite a lot of feminine, delicate vibes that corresponds to Peach's general demeanour. But it definitely also has this edge and this link to feminist liberation as well. That just corresponds to Peach's vibe in general. She will destroy you with a bright pink umbrella and she will look amazing in doing so. And she will do it in heels, which... watch Mario do the same in heels, or Bowser. I would actually watch that. Mario would look great in heels. I think it would really enhance the whole overalls look. Next Mario Brothers film, you know what to do. I'd be remiss to go through Peach's weaponry without mentioning the Peach has a gun meme. It's mainly linked to the fact that when fans looked through the Super Smash Bros. Melee game files and looked specifically into Peach's files, they discovered that there was a tiny icon in there that corresponded to an assault rifle as a kind of little Easter egg, I guess. So I do have to mention that umbrella guns were a thing. The cane gun first emerged in 1823, so, you know, just pretty straightforward. You think it's a walking stick, but pow pow. Sorry, it's actually a gun. And the umbrella gun was pretty much going with the same general vibe. So is it possible that that parasol has a gun? But now it's time to talk about the poleaxe. So the poleaxe emerged as a weapon in the 14th century, and its design mainly stems from the need to find a way of piercing plate armor. And it has this wooden haft, or it's a handle. It's not that complex, which can go from 1 meter 20 to 2 meters. This is, well, it's definitely more than 1 meter 60. I mean, it's way taller than me. And that haft is mounted with the steel head of the poleaxe itself. So generally the axe head itself, it has an axe blade, obviously, and it has this kind of spike on the top, and then it has this kind of hammer on the reverse. I'm not sure I said hammer that way, but there we go. So a lot of the kind of way in which poleaxes were used was really to kind of use momentum and motion of the poleaxe to pierce armor in lots of different ways, and the way in which it's used in combat often corresponds to quarterstaff fighting. It can be used to cut down your opponent, but also bludgeon them, trip them, disarm them, blocking different blows. It's a multi-purpose weapon, and that's why I love it so much. It can be used for thrusting, cutting, just everything. And there's lots of different treatises on the poleaxe, specifically from the 15th and 16th centuries. So there's no reference to or use of the poleaxe as a weapon by Princess Peach before the Super Mario Bros. Movie. That's really the first appearance that we have of it was in the general Super Mario lore. But I think it makes sense in several ways. Firstly, it's a melee weapon. As we've seen, that seems to be her weapon use of choice, something she would have picked up from the Toad Guard when she was raised by Toads, because the lore of the movie, spoiler alert for the Mario Bros. Movie, is that she basically arrived from one of the magic pipes from a different world, and she was raised by the Toads. And that relates to the fact that this is also a weapon that she is making use of kind of on the go, rather than her having a designated weapon constantly by her side, similarly to her other weapons, arguably. And kind of corresponds to the fact that Princess Peach is not necessarily a warrior type who's going to be in armour with a sword, although I would be a fan of that, and I've actually drawn that, but is pretty much a kind, generous, pacifist character who you'd really, really have to piss off if she's going to pick up a frying pan, a parasol, or indeed a poleaxe to fight you. I mean, I love the inclusion of the poleaxe in the Super Mario Bros. Movie. I think it would have been really, really easy for them to just give her a sword or something like that, but they just went with a pretty original weapon type, and I really like that. A type of weapon you would associate to some extent with guards protecting a palace, so being able to reverse that from a weapon that is used to protect the palace from Bowser's invasions to a weapon that Peach takes up and picks up literally to go and confront Bowser herself. To go and confront Bowser herself is quite a nice parallel twist. My only criticism about the poleaxe is that she doesn't use it enough. She picks it up, she looks very cool, and then she, again, spoiler, just kind of points it at Bowser, and then she has to go through with the whole narrative of her having to marry Bowser so that her kingdom's population doesn't get destroyed. Despite the fact that Princess Peach gets her badass moments, there's more of a focus on her brawling and athletic prowess throughout the film than there is around the poleaxe itself, and I guess it's more so used as symbolic value. In the context of the movie, she basically is not damsel in distress. She is a person who goes on a quest with Mario so that they can rescue his brother Luigi, who has been captured by Bowser. So while that reversal, where she's no longer the damsel in distress, is very satisfying and it gives her lots of opportunities for action, she doesn't really have a standout hero moment. And she does find a way of fighting her way out of the wedding with Bowser, but she still to some extent has to rely on Mario and Luigi saving the day, which it is a Mario movie, so it's I think there wasn't really, they kind of kept with the status quo really on that one, while providing a few twists. The movie itself, I thought, was fine. It was fun. Wasn't necessarily revolutionary. I think it could have done a lot more with its material and maybe been a bit more experimental and adventurous. But that being said, it was a very fun, entertaining time. And I think, if anything, it's quite encouraging to see that Nintendo wants to push the character of Princess Peach into new, interesting directions. So I very much look forward to seeing what will happen with a very potential possible sequel, and whether or not we'll have more Princess Peach proactively poleaxing. Or in a future video game. Super Princess Peach poleax party. Say that 7 times. So with all that in mind, this is quite interesting when people's initial gut reaction to this movie and the trailer was Peach and the Poleaxe has been woke Peach, or just the woke Mario movie. Firstly, just stop using woke. Just what are you doing? And secondly, where? I mean, yeah, she has more agency as a character in a film where Nintendo has been clearly very, very closely supervising the script, the design, and the direction. So if you have an issue with the film's deviation from the canon, you are basically having an issue with the company who has created the canon for that very character. It doesn't really make much sense. And secondly, as we've seen throughout this entire video, Peach brawls, Peach fights. She has done so for a while. So while I don't think we should sugarcoat the fact that yes, she has been in the kind of a lot of the time been in a passive damsel in distress roles, it's quite obvious that the franchise has found ways of making her more proactive in her different iterations. And I think it also sometimes relates to people experiencing a weird discomfort with a very hyper feminine character being able to have more the kind of fighting that aside. So I think Princess Peach and her Poleaxe perfectly presents the different paradoxes of being able to, oh, I ruined it, I could have just continued with P, of being able to play with different assumptions around gender and fighting. She is this kind of bright pink, frilly, gentle character who also just fights her way admirably through a range of games and now a movie, and doesn't seem to have a problem with being able to balance her femininity and her kind-hearted nature with being able to fight for what she cares about. And the weapons that she uses show this interesting parallel historically with weapons that have been on surface level unassuming but have often been reclaimed in the context of self-defense, dissent, and liberation. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video, and if you do, please remember to like, subscribe if you haven't done so already, and generally share this video around. What's that, Princess Peach? You want people to subscribe? Because a lot of people are currently watching these videos but are not subscribed. And if they do, they might have more of a say into the next videos that might happen on this channel. That sounds pretty good, Princess Peach.
Oh, right!
Stay safe, sword lovers and Poleaxe lovers, and see you in another video. Poleaxe, 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 I love you. Yeah, Poleaxe, Poleaxe. That's just so bad.